Today's weather, it's a little cloudy. It's breezy. But 55 years ago, the sky was crystal blue. The bluest blue you can imagine. Not a cloud in the sky. The sun was so bright. And it was breezy, but not like the wind is blowing right now, but with just a cool breeze blowing. I can remember seeing that blue sky. The school day was just like any other school day, with the exception of the third grade was going to do a play of presidents who have birthdays in February. And it was George Washington's birthday, but also Abraham Lincoln's birthday is in February.
Miss Beasley was a third grade teacher, and I had her in third grade. And she was always having some sort of play, something. And I just remember the pomp and circumstances associated with that. We just had a great time. Of course, anytime you were out of class and you were with everybody else in that auditorium, it was just a great time. Specifics of the play, I don't remember. It was in an auditorium, and there were 435 elementary students in this one building, along with teachers. And so we were all gathered, and we had this play. And after the play, we went back to our room, and then we broke for lunch. We were in the classroom, and the teacher was sitting up front, typical classroom setting. There's about 30 or 35 students in that room. And so we were doing our math homework. It was quiet, this kind of thing, and the door burst open. And a teacher yelled something, and then she left, just as quickly as she came. And our teacher, Miss Badgett, said, well, what did she say? She was confused, and nobody had heard her except the little boy sitting at the very front, right at the door. He said, I think she said the curtain's on fire. And when he said that, I mean, the words weren't even out of his mouth, and smoke became, kind of rolling up under the door, and it began to fill the room up and everything.
Then somebody came running down the hall in the school and just flung the door open and said something. And I think she said something like the stage is on fire or something like that. It was one of the teachers, as I recall. And we were to stand. We'd never had a fire drill. We did not have any kind of fire alarm system. I remember she wanted us to line up, but a lot of kids went to the back to get their coats and stuff. But then they started out in the hall, and when I got out in the hall, I looked back to the right and could see the fire.
They had floor lamps. It was a wooden stage and had floor lamps, great old big can lights like that, this kind of thing. And then they had the curtain was a big green velvet, heavy, thick curtain. And it would take like two guys to pull the rope to spread the thing. And so the theory was that one of those lights exploded and set off a spark inside that curtain, and it smoldered for a period of time. And then all of a sudden it just burst into flames and ran up the curtain and into the ceiling and so forth.
What was it like to look at it? Just, you're just scared out of your mind, just practically, And you're trying to get somewhere to get away from it because you could see this pitch black. You couldn't get any light through it. It's so dark. And it was coming at you like a monster. But I just remembered Mom and Dad saying, if you're ever in trouble, all you have to do is pray. And I remembered that, and I started praying then. I really, other than being scared, I don't really know any other way to describe how I felt. I was just afraid.
Well, we had not really settled down to start the math class. And the door opened Something was said and the door shut. I didn't hear what they said. Nobody else did either. And then there was a panic in the room, but I don't know where it came from. And everybody was leaving. So I guess I'll leave too. Back to the classroom door to go into the hallway to go outside. But it's so black you can't see. Blacker than any midnight you've ever seen. And I thought, to go outside, I have to go left and go down the stairs. So I felt my way along that hall. And then I felt the handrail that would take me down the stairs.
There was one fire extinguisher in the whole building. As I understand, Mr. Phillips, the principal, was trying to put the fire out using that. Hopeless case. We had no fire escapes. There was no fire escape to get us out the window. And so as a result of all of that, when that fire hit, there was nothing but panic because we'd never practiced the fire drill. We didn't know what to do. So everybody hit the door except me. And my concern was that jacket that I had taken. And I knew that if I went home that day, my brother would beat the daylights out of me. I tell people sometimes I think he would have killed me, but probably not. But he would not have been happy, and I didn't want to face him, you know. And so I spent 10, 12, 15 seconds, ran to the back of the room, got that jacket, got back to the door. By the time I'm the last one out of the room, by the time I got to the door, all these students were coming from the front to the back, and so I was trampled. I was like stepping out in the middle of a herd of cattle. And everybody's just in a panic trying to get out. And so I was trampled and knocked out. And when I came to, after I don't know how many seconds, that's when I experienced just intense pain. And I never saw the fire, by the way. I never saw a flame.
I could hear other students in the hall behind me running, scared, screaming, crying. But they couldn't see me. I couldn't see them. Blacker than any midnight you will ever see in your life. And they trampled me on the stairs. I was at the top, the last thing I remember. But I woke up at the bottom. Now I have no idea how long I lay there. But something said, get up. And I raised my head up off the floor. It was a cement floor, the bottom landing. And I could see out the doorway where I needed to go out. I could see the sunshine coming in. And I got up and I walked to that doorway. And I looked out. And everything was green, looking through a Coca-Cola bottle. I didn't hear anything. And I just walked around to where the buses were. And somebody put me in a car.
You couldn't see your hand. You couldn't see anything. You could hear, but you couldn't see anything. And people were just running and yelling and screaming and crying. And I was knocked down. And when I came to, I did not hear any other person at all. But I could not stand up. So I got over to the wall. I was trying to remember where I was. And I just started crawling and got to where a wall was, but I still couldn't get up. So a couple of times I remember that I was a different place when I woke up. I guess I passed out again. Still could not see. I remembered the last time finding the stairs and started down, bumping on my bottom. And then I was at the bottom of the stairs. And somebody was yelling for me, just like my mama yelled. And that's what I was hearing, was somebody calling me. And that time there was light. And I don't know whether I got up. The next thing I remembered, I was out of the building.
It was just darkness. I mean, I could put my hand here and I could not have seen my hand. It was just total darkness. And so I stood to my feet and I heard screaming coming out of the room beside the one I had come out of. And so I just pushed on that door. And when I pushed on that door, I mean, it just opened up just like that, and then it blew up. And it just exploded, a backdraft. It blew me back against the wall and knocked me out. Well, when I came to, the second time I'm outside the building and I'm running and I'm going home. And that's why I say, God got me out of that building. If you talk to the Marcia, you talk to Tamala, you talk to Johnny, you're going to get the same reports. They don't know. There's no physical reason for them to have gotten out of that building. In my case, I think God got me out of that building. And then I'm on my way home. I want my mama. By that time, the pain, I don't have pain. I'm basically burned from my knees up, and it was third-degree burn. And so when you get a third-degree burn, the nerve endings are burned away. But the only thing I could think of was go home. And so that's what I was going to do. Well, then God intervened again, and he placed a high school student in front of me, just right out in the middle of an open field, and this guy appears, and he's got his arms out like this, and he won't let me go around him. And when I move, he moves, just like that. And so finally, he made me go into the high school building, which was adjacent, but it wasn't on fire. And so he knew I could get help there.
Well, the first person I saw that I knew was my oldest uncle, my dad's older brother. And of course, he didn't know me. I didn't realize I looked that different. It was like I was in a dream. And the next person I saw was my uncle, who is Daddy's youngest brother, who's 5 years older than me. And I asked him, I said, Ephie, his name is Ephraim, am I dreaming? And he said I reached out and touched him, and my flesh came off on his clothes. So he knew then that it was me, and that he needed some help. I needed to get somewhere to get help. And he had a car, so Ify loaded me, Marcia, and 2 other kids in his car, and we went to Mount Airy trying to find doctors.
And so I'm in and out of consciousness for what seems like eternity, and then finally an ambulance comes. And so the ambulance showed up, and they put 5 of us in the same ambulance. They took me, and that ambulance went to Dobson, which is 12 miles away from where we were, or 15. And anyway, to a place called the Dobson Emergency Clinic. And it was like a 15-bed triage unit, manned by 2 doctors and a nurse and a receptionist. And they sent after the doctors. So each one of us were put in a separate room. And I was unconscious, and the story goes that, one look at me and I'm not going to make it anyway. So I didn't really trust my recollection for a long period of time. And then things kind of started coming together. Because what happened next is I'm in a room and I wake up and I'm laying on one of these little gurneys. And I looked around the room and there was no one there. And I sat up on that gurney, and the end of this finger was laying beside me, and I looked in that little mirror above a sink, and what I saw was a monster. I'm sorry. What I saw had no ears, had no hair, had no eyebrows. These came from the side of my head. Its face was liquid and dripping. So I was horrified. And you can see how I still remember it. So I jerked back from that mirror. And when I jerked back from that mirror, and believe what people want, Jesus was standing at the end of that gurney. And my brother did not know who I was. My principal didn't know who I was. I found out later my mother had seen me in his office and did not know who I was. This man called my name. He simply said, "Frankie, you're going to be okay." And when he said that, this peace that Paul talks about in Philippians, this peace just flooded over me. And there was a calmness came over me, and I just lay back down on that gurney. And I either passed out or went to sleep or whatever, but the bottom line was I became conscious of my surroundings 2.5 months later. Every time I think of the word survivor, immediately what comes to my mind is the Titanic. All these people were all of a sudden cast out of comfort on this cruise ship into these icy waters. And most of them are not in lifeboats, or a lot of them are not in lifeboats. They're clinging to some kind of a log, some kind of piece of wood that floats, and so they're holding on to it, so they're surviving. Well, that's not the way I want to live my life. I don't want to go through life holding on to a log floating in icy water. It's got to be something different. At that particular point in time, life was kind of tough. But again, I began to think of all those things that God had done for me, and how I basically had to decide to live or die. That's what it came down to, just that simple. I either live or I die. And so once I decided that, then there's another set of questions, and that all relates to, well, what kind of life am I going to live?
Do you think what happened was unfair at all?
Well, I had a friend ask me what kind of a God I thought it was that would make children have to go through that kind of stuff. And I've just always known that, I guess I was taught, but I've just always known that I wasn't here by myself, that if I needed something, it might be hard, but I could do it, because he wasn't going to, 1 Corinthians 10:13, he won't give you anything harder than what you can handle. Sometimes it's very at the edge. Maybe you feel like the Lord's, are you sure this is something I'm supposed to be doing? Do I have to go through this? I am very strong, but I know that I would not have been as strong or understood things quite the same way had I not gone through each of those learning experiences. I didn't like it, but I got through it, and then I saw what I learned from that perspective that I would have learned any other way.
Just learning to cope with the stares, comments. It can be difficult. I can remember after I came home from the hospital, Mama would always take me to town with her on Saturday. And she never tried to shield me from those who stared. Not that she was throwing me to the wolves by any means, but she knew that I had to learn to deal with it on my own. And that was a difficult time. I can remember maybe I tried to hide behind Mama. I didn't want anybody to know I was hiding. I was very self-conscious for many, many years. And Frank had explained one time that something he had read, that people with hand disabilities are more self-conscious than those with facial disfigurement. He's right. You don't see your face. Your hands are in front of you all the time.
Yeah, the other day I was having my car serviced, and this woman came up to me and she goes, "I don't mean to be nosy, but what happened to you?" I said, I was actually burned as a result of surviving an airplane crash. I said, I'm fine. How are you doing? And I believe something that one of my favorite doctors told me one time. There's no such thing as a minor burn if it happens to you. I had some doctors that took pictures of my hands, and they said, we don't even have to show anybody anything else. I said, all we have to do is show them your hands and your painted fingernails, and there's a message in that despite their little, they're all deformed, they're little bits and pieces of nails. They say that it's almost impossible to destroy the human nail, almost indestructible. Most of mine are gone. Maybe they're a symbol, for me of how close I came to destruction, and yet they're still growing. Marcia remembered my fingernails, and it's just, it's that gift that I was given. Don't let those scars be a roadblock or a barrier to you, whether it's wearing what you want to wear, whether it's doing something you want to do, whether it's facing some sort of fear that you have. I just think I saw Marcia bloom after going to the World Burn Congress. And then over the last few years, just continuing to see her take on more responsibility and being so much more involved with the support groups and her outreach. And then, of course, the extraordinary work that they're doing now with the burn survivors, inpatient and outside, with their support group, and just how involved. I mean, I'm just thrilled to have been a part of it. But so many people are walking around and they don't have any scars on the outside to show the angst that they're feeling on the inside, whether they've lost a loved one, whether they have cancer, whether they have, they're going through a divorce, whether they've lost, whatever the loss is, but you can't see it necessarily in the same way unless you see it in their eyes or their demeanor or their affect or something. I really want these people to understand, please don't think just because I've sustained this burn injury that my injury is any more important than your illness or your loss, because it's not. It totally is not. It's just mine, and it's my experience.
about 4 years ago, we began to volunteer on the burn unit. I don't know if Frank explained any of that. But Frank had been volunteering a little on his own. And we decided that in order to be a volunteer on the burn unit, you had to be SOAR trained, SOAR, which stands for Survivors Offering Assistance in Recovery. So Frank and his wife were SOAR trained, and I was SOAR trained, and Tamala. So Frank and Tamala and I began to sort of trade off days going to the hospital, and we would go in ICU and the step-down unit. Sometimes there was no one in either of those places to see, but we would meet family in the waiting room and let them tell their story. It was just amazing how people would smile when you'd walk in their room. And our cell phone numbers were on a board there at the nurse's station, so that if someone needed to talk to us when there was no one there, we would go to the hospital and talk to them. I never thought just by walking in a room could make a difference. I had a wife to tell me one day, she said her husband was the patient. And she said, I had no hope for him until you walked in the room, because she thought his life was over. And she saw that it's not the end of the road, that you can live a normal life. Maybe a few little kinks here and there, but you can go on and have a good life. And that's our message, that a burn injury is not the end of your life, that you can still have a full life after an injury.
We had one fellow that came and wanted to, that's what he was most worried about, his social life. Would he ever be able to have a girlfriend? Would he ever be able to, have a family? And even though each person's burn might be different and might cause there to be problems that I don't know about, just to know that the 6 of us are still alive and still moving after 55 years now, and we've had good lives. We have 12 grandchildren. We have 4 great-grandchildren already. Yes, you can have a life.
Well, I would have people ask me, for years and years ago, why did you marry Tamala? And I said, because she was my best friend. And a lot of them say, you can't marry somebody because they're your best friend. And I've always thought, I've known people that married their worst enemy. Why shouldn't I marry my best friend? But a lot of the people that you talk to in the hospital who have physical scars view those scars as a wall that keep people away from them. And I tell the people not to look at the scars as a wall, but to look at them as a filter. And the filter will get rid of the superficial people in your life that only look at the nail polish, the hairdo, the makeup, that kind of stuff. But you are not the scars. You are still the beautiful person who lives inside your body. And some people will see that, but some people can't. And you don't need the superficial people in your life. And I offer as evidence of that the fact that the 6 people who were critically burned in the fire with my wife, 5 of them are still in their first marriage, and they're past the 40-year mark in their first marriage.
My mom kept a journal. She wrote several days. But she wrote it in third person as though it was me speaking. And I didn't know about it for a long time. George Washington's birthday. I went to school as usual, ate lunch. Then a tragedy happened. Flat Rock School burned to the ground. A flash fire. It all happened about 1:30 p.m. Friday the 22nd. I was carried to the emergency room where I stayed until about 5 p.m. when Mother came to see me for about 2 minutes. The doctors wouldn't let her stay any longer because I was a very sick little girl. I had some sweet nurses. Mrs. Manning was my night nurse. She sent me pretty carnations. Daddy went to Wadesboro late tonight. Mother is staying here in Winston-Salem with Uncle Bud and Aunt Shirley, so she would be close to the hospital. May the 1st. Today Mother came early. She brought me a spelling book, reader, and arithmetic book, and I was pleased. Mother said I was more pleased to see the books than I was to see her. Friday, July the 5th. Today I went to surgery again. Dr. Schaffner covered my right arm and put it in a cast. He took the skin from my left leg. I was in surgery for about 4 hours. Sunday, August the 11th. Today I went for a car ride. Rode out to Donna's, but she wasn't at home. Mother took me to Staley's, and I had a milkshake and some peanuts. Gee, they were good. I enjoyed my ride so much. It was the first ride I had had in 5.5 months. It was awfully hot outside, and I was glad to get back inside where it was air conditioned.
When did you first discover that this journal existed?
I knew for a long time that Mom had one, but I didn't know if I even wanted to ask if I could read it. Therefore, I didn't. I'm thinking when she gave it to me at one time, but I never read it. It was just more than I could do.
What was it like the first time you opened it?
Hurts. It hurts. Because you see what pain she's going through. And, those are the people that are forgotten so many times. It's the parents that they had to live through this.
What has Marcia told you about that day?
It's odd. We didn't talk about it. For the first 50 years, we didn't talk about it. I just said, why, my child? But I think she has accepted it much better than I have. It's like I wanted to protect her from the outside world because people looked at her different, and that hurt me. When my child hurts, I hurt. But she has accepted it very, very well, I think, and she's gone on with her life, and she worked hard and worked as long as her hands would let her, because her hands gave out and her tendons were damaged when she was burned, and it kept her from doing a lot of things that normal people could do. But she felt like she had to prove herself, and she did. She proved that she could do as much as anybody else.
My boss man, when I graduated from high school, I'd never seen the ocean. I'd never been to the ocean. And what he did is he gave me $50, and he took me and Linda. We were dating her, and his daughter and my Linda were best friends. So I got to go with Linda and their family to the beach, and he paid for everything. And I'd never seen the beach. It started off. It really started off almost to be a disaster, because we got about halfway down there, and we'd left at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 or something like that, and we were all in one station wagon. I mean, we were in there like sardines with all the luggage and everything. And so I'm sitting over there scrunched up against the door, and I look. Everybody else is asleep, and JQ's driving. And he was a phenomenal driver. He should have been either a race car driver or a patrolman himself. I mean, I've never seen anybody that could drive like he did. But the bottom line is, he's like this, and all of a sudden we start leaving the road. He went to sleep. And we went all the way across 2 lanes of traffic and down on the shoulder on the other side, and I yelled at him, and he woke up and recovered, you know. So that started the trip. And then we got on down to the beach, and we drove up to this Joyland Hotel. It's not even there anymore. And it's right where the pavilion is. And I still hadn't seen, we'd gone in the back way, and I still hadn't seen the ocean. And so we all got out, we loaded everything up and this kind of thing. And so Linda says, let's go. And so we start walking. And I remember we were standing right in the middle of a parking lot. And it was hot. Oh, it was so hot. And burned people have trouble with heat. And I stopped. I just stopped flat in my tracks, because I saw it. I saw the ocean for the first time. It's like the first time I saw the Grand Canyon. I mean, overwhelming. And just a sense of God, just an awe of, just an awe. You know, we all stayed in, it seemed like it was 2 rooms. Her and Linda, her friend's name was Linda too, so they stayed with Jackie and JQ in another room. But got to see Linda in a bathing suit for the first time, all that kind of stuff. It was just great. It was just great. We got to talk a lot, and you know, just walk along the beach and hold hands. And I think back on it now, and I didn't even hesitate. You know, just to wear a bathing suit, no shirt. And I know people were staring. I know some people were looking. But you know what? It didn't bother her. People looked, but it didn't bother anybody. It was just that kind of a thing. And so that, you know, I hadn't really thought about that. You know, that's interesting you would ask that. Neat.